My wife Mary and I are a strong couple. I'm not afraid she'll cheat on me, and God knows I would never betray her. These aren't just empty words. To my own disgust, I was unfaithful in my first marriage. But that wasn't the reason for the divorce. I don't believe she ever found out. She never reproached me. Of course, I never told her about my affair. I may not be the smartest person in the world, but I'm not that stupid. And while that's no excuse, our marriage was on life support at the time. In the end, after many years of slowly fading away, it ended. It was like watching a cancer patient descend into a living hell before finally giving up. No, I wasn't a good husband the first time around. That's my fault. This is my second marriage, and I started it off on the right foot. No lies, ever, about anything. I'm my current wife's fourth husband. She also learned lessons from the past. We were both committed to a long-term relationship. We live in the suburbs. High fences, kids, and dogs. A nice neighborhood. I was pretty close with my neighbor Frank. We would meet in his garage and drink martinis. His wife, Sandy, was pretty. Not stunning, but definitely pretty. They were the only couple on the cul-de-sac who didn't have children. My kids from my first marriage had just left home. Everyone else had young children. It was a typical middle-class American life. We threw parties for the neighbors, blocked off the street, and the kids ran around like crazy while we responsible adults partied like rock stars. The first time, as I recall, was on New Year's Eve. Frank and I had been drinking martinis since 7 o'clock in the evening. I didn't feel any pain. Then, completely out of the blue, the martinis hit me hard. I had only had 4 or 6. It was around 10 with a couple of hours to go before midnight, and I started to fall down. I staggered out of Frank's garage. I stumbled and wandered around the cul-de-sac. The damn street was a circle, and I kept wandering past my house, eventually returning to the cul-de-sac. It was like a NASCAR race. Finally, after I went into Sam and Sally's house, and then into Rob and Tracy's house, Sandy took pity on me, grabbed my arm, and dragged me home. It's all a blur, but I believe I remember her pushing me onto the couch. "Damn, Bob, you're drunk as a pig. You're going to get hung up in the morning." Sandy giggled and added, "Period. But from what I heard from Mary, you're pretty hung up without the booze." Then I passed out. It must have been around midnight when Mary woke me up from my drunken sleep. "Get up, you idiot. It's midnight and you haven't given me the New Year's kiss you promised." She tugged and pulled at me until I groaned, gathered my strength, and got up from the couch. "Ugh, Mary, I'm still drunk enough," my eyes are blurry just saying, "not to feel that bad, but I know I'm going to regret all of Frank's martinis." I stood unsteadily, and my pants slipped down, crumpling at my feet. Mary gave me a hellish look. I reached for her, and she hesitated a little. Maybe because I stank like a distillery, or maybe because my pants were lying on the floor. We kissed on New Year's Eve. She was hot and ready for sex. Finally, she sighed, kissed me on the cheek, helped me into bed, and as soon as my head hit the pillow, I passed out. The next morning, I was drinking black coffee and nursing a hangover when Mary told me everything that had been on her mind. I was a drunk idiot and deserved everything she said. I agreed with her. I hate losing control. Over the years, I've done enough stupid things, and alcohol has always been involved. I promised her I would watch my drinking. Then she asked why my pants were falling down. To be honest, I had no idea. And I told her so. "Well, you were drunk as a pig. Who knows what happened to you?" She gave me an annoyed look that said, "You're a stupid guy." I couldn't say anything. I agreed with her. It was July 4th. The summer party season had really begun. The street was decorated in red, white, and blue. Sam brought his super-duper grill that could cook a whole cow. He was cooking hot dogs and hamburgers for the kids. The girls from the neighborhood set the tables. There was a keg of beer in Frank's garage. It was a great day. Around 9, the long sunset began. The kids were thrilled, and a group of fathers drove to an Indian reservation and brought back some great fireworks. I missed the fireworks. I threw up in Sandy's rose bushes. Then I fell into Sandy's rose bushes. It was a good thing I was drunk. Otherwise, all the thorns that scratched me would have been very painful. I decided it was time for a nap. I believe Sandy found me under the rose bushes, bleeding profusely. She picked me up and helped me to the house. I vaguely remember Sandy pushing me onto the couch. Then I passed out. I woke up to my wife hitting me on the head and neck with a rolled-up newspaper. "Damn it, Bob, you can't drink!" she yelled at me. "Did you pee in the house?" "What? Ow, ow, stop it, damn it! Ow! Why would you believe I peed in the house?" I said to the rolled-up newspaper that was hitting me on the head and face. "Look!" She pointed to my pants and underwear, which were around my ankles. "Disgusting!" She threw her hands up and left the living room. Halloween in our cul-de-sac is always fun. Lots of kids, lots of candy, lots of rum. All the houses are decorated. This year, all the adults dressed up. Mary wore a mischievous snow-white costume. I was a pirate. Rob was a scarecrow, and Tracy was Dorothy with ruby slippers and a stuffed puppy in a basket. Frank was an astronaut. Oh yes, Frank was in an astronaut costume. "Hey, Captain Kirk, how's it going?" I asked Frank. He took a huge drag from the joint he was holding. I took a drag too, then took a swig from the bottle of rum. "Not bad, Captain Morgan," he said, then coughed. The kids went from house to house, collecting a lifetime supply of sugar. Their parents went from house to house, drinking one shot after another. I chased Snow White, yelling that I wanted a piece of her apple. Overall, it was a lot of fun. I felt no pain as I chased Snow White into Frank's house. She was giggling. I caught her, grabbed her by the chest, and pulled her toward me. But then I realized that this wasn't my Snow White. This wasn't Mary. This was Sandy. This year, they were both Snow White. I realized my mistake, stepped back from her, apologizing and apologizing. She just laughed, grabbed my now seriously depleted bottle of rum, and took a swig. "It's okay, Captain. You can chase me as much as you want. Who knows? Maybe you'll even catch me." She giggled a little more. "I know that the path to cheating starts with you getting into a situation where cheating is possible. And damn it, if the situation is right, then it's probably going to happen. This was one of those situations. I was drunk, she was drunk. So my years of experience told me that the only thing I could do was run away, which is what I did. I love Mary so much that I wasn't going to ruin my marriage again." I left Frank and Sandy's house and saw my Snow White standing there in the middle of the cul-de-sac. I waved to her and walked out into the street. She grabbed my bottle of rum and drank it straight from the bottle. "Hey, sailor, want to have some fun?" she asked. We continued to have fun. I don't remember much from that night, but apparently when my Snow White came down from our bedroom the next morning, she found me in pirate pants and underwear on the floor, with another nearly empty bottle of Captaina, Morgan's rum, and I was lying unconscious on the couch, and she went crazy. She yelled at me and threw things at me, 3 plates, 6 cups, 1 carving knife. I had a severe, throbbing, reality-distorting headache. My mouth felt like the entire Fourth Army had marched through it in dirty boots. My stomach was churning. I rushed to the kitchen sink and threw up the chips. "Enough!" she screamed. "Not only do you get drunk every holiday and ruin everything, but now this!" Her eyes were red and swollen, mostly from crying. "Now you're cheating on me, too!" She looked like she was about to explode. "Mary, I've never, ever cheated on you. It's the truth. We talked about this. I would never, never cheat on you. Why did you believe that I cheated on you?" I said, panic evident in my voice. "I don't know. Maybe it's because of the lipstick on your body. You ugly man!" "What?" I looked down and saw a ring of bright red lipstick. "What the hell is that?" I was confused. "Well, it's not my lipstick, man," she said, throwing a can of Campbell's soup at my head. I was so stunned that I didn't even dodge it. Bam! The can hit me right above the eye. I must have looked terrible without my pants on, with blood running down my face, red eyes, and pale skin. She ran out of the room. I sank to the floor and sat there for an hour. She screamed the whole time until she grabbed her suitcase and left the house. After the door slammed, I could still hear her yelling at me. It went on until I heard the car door slam. When she drove out of the cul-de-sac, I found my last bottle of Captain Morgan. Hangover cure, you know. Mary. I was furious. No, that's not right. I was furious like Krakatoa. Boom! That asshole. I was boiling with rage as I drove away from the house. I just wanted to get away from him. How could he? If there was one thing that was the foundation of our relationship, it was honesty. I don't lie. For me, the truth, no matter what, was the simplest and best way out. I'm an honest person by nature. I don't lie, and therefore I don't believe that others do. I know it's not true, but that's how I am. That fiery red circle spoke for itself. "That bastard!" I yelled to myself, tears streaming down my face as I drove out of the cul-de-sac. I drove around town aimlessly for several hours and then ended up at my sister's house. I just sat in the car. I was stunned. I was furious. My heart was broken. I was ashamed. I wanted to kill that traitor, that lying husband. Then I burst into tears and sobbed. Nothing made sense. Neither him nor his damn alcohol. The next day, neither Mary nor Bob did much of anything. Bob sobered up, and Mary got drunk. The next day they met. The meeting took place in a small cafe. Mary ordered green tea, Bob ordered black coffee. Bob spoke first. "Mary, I love you. You, our marriage, are everything to me. I know it looks bad, and I honestly don't understand what happened." Bob sighed and continued, "Despite all this, I clearly have a problem with alcohol." He lowered his head. "Mary, honey, I'm so sorry." "Well, Bob, I need to know everything. Who is she? What the hell is going on? Then maybe we can talk. As for your drinking, either you quit or I'm leaving." Bob nodded in agreement. They drove home, Bob moved into the guest room, and Mary became a detective. Mary went around to all the neighbors on the cul-de-sac to look at their Halloween photos. Of course, there were 10,000 photos of kids in costumes, but Mary was diligent. She found several phone numbers and got photos of all the wives. She found 4 women whose lipstick was, or appeared to be, bright red on Halloween. Sandy, the other sexy Snow White. Tan, who came dressed as a high-class Asian prostitute. Sally was Dorothy in red shoes and matching lipstick. And Tracy, the devil girl, all in red with horns and a tail. She printed out the photos and believed in every one of those women. Bob started going to counseling for 3 reasons. First, he had better do something or Mary would kill him, then divorce him, then kill him again, but slowly. Second, Bob was genuinely concerned and upset about his behavior. And third, well, it wasn't AA. Christmas at a standstill was a time of joy and almost friendly rivalry in decorating homes. Sam spared no expense. He had a 12-foot inflatable Santa, and Frank responded with laser beams that painted his house in multicolored snowflakes falling on the house and lawn. Bob went with tradition, decorating his house with 35 garlands, each 30 feet long. Randy had a snow machine that turned his house into a winter wonderland. All in all, the cul-de-sac was definitely ready for Christmas. The day after Christmas, the annual post-Christmas party was held in the cul-de-sac. It started around 4 p.m., after everyone returned from the local mall, where they exchanged gifts. There were leftovers from Christmas dinner, which always included plenty of eggnog. Bob had been a very good boy this year. He refused to drink hot rum with butter and didn't drink any eggnog. Overall, Mary was pleased. It helped that Bob hated eggnog and had caught a cold. The day after the Christmas party was unique for Bob and Mary. He didn't have a hangover, and she wasn't angry with him. They decided that everything was very good. The next day, Bob suffered. He had come down with a bad cold. He was sick and felt terrible. He was hot as the surface of the sun and cold as an Arctic night. He treated his symptoms by drinking bottles of NyQuil, which did nothing except make him sluggish. Bob could have sworn that Mary came home at lunchtime, checked on him, fixed his pillows, kissed him on the forehead, and left for work. He fell asleep sniffling, believing he had a wonderful wife. When Mary came home from work for dinner, she checked on him. Mary was a very intelligent woman, and although she was very angry with Bob, she knew that given his condition, he couldn't have picked up some girl on the street. That meant that either Bob was involved in a long-term affair or, if it was a long-term affair, then some girl was coming to her house to sleep with her husband. Given her husband's condition today, he couldn't get up, go downstairs, and let her in. That meant she needed a key to get in. That meant Bob had to give her a key. Now Mary was beside herself with rage. Imagine the fury of the explosion in Hiroshima. Add North Korea to that and shake it up real good. She called a friend who worked for the police. He had the detective's number. Mary called and arranged to meet him the next morning at 8 o'clock. Mary emptied the trash can, which was filled with used tissues, gathered the empty NyQuil bottles, and then stormed into her bedroom. Max popcorn. My secretary Cindy showed her into my office. She sat down in the faded gray leather chair to the left of my desk. She was an attractive woman who also looked quite upset. Her ample breasts strained the fabric of her blouse, allowing me to see her beautiful cleavage. She introduced herself as Mary, just Mary, thank you. Her eyes were both sad and angry. I had seen women like her hundreds of times before. They believed that maybe God, but not this, that they were being deceived by their despicable husbands, uncles, brothers, boyfriends, girlfriends, long-lost cousins, money-hungry men, and other lowly creatures from the world of relationships. As I said, I'd seen it all before. In my line of work, you can't be soft, tough, rough, focused. That's what clients like, and they want answers. Preferably with photos, videos, emails, text messages, phone records, travel documents, receipts, and, if possible, blood-signed confessions notarized by a notary public. Thank you very much. Mary told me everything. Drunk husband, mysterious dates, memory lapses, unbearable situations. Yes, quite predictable. I nodded, looking stern, gloomy, and apparently taking detailed notes, mostly scribbles. Okay, Mary, $2,500, and I'll take the case. At 10:30, she returned to my office, handed me an envelope with $2,500, and I took the case. I did everything necessary. First, I called Louis and told him to install listening devices and cameras. Yes, I wanted them in all the usual places, in the car, in the men's restroom, in the bedroom. Don't worry about the guest room. If a husband is having fun in bed, experience tells me it's never in the guest room, in the garage, and in all the bathrooms. Then I contacted Marvin to hack into this bastard's computer, his phone, and everything stored in his cloud storage. Most of these clowns don't realize that if they save something on their phone, it stays in the cloud forever. That's how I found some pretty compromising photos. Stupid cheaters. Then I asked Cindy to prepare for Operation Honeypot. If we couldn't find this cheater's mistress, we'd give him a new one to chase after. Most of these fools were predictable. Once a cheater, always a cheater. Cindy was good. She could make even the Pope break his vows. I decided to keep an eye on this slacker. Nothing can replace the human mind. I prepared a drone and hid it in the trunk of my SUV. You never know when you might need eyes in the sky. I told Just Mary that we would have answers in a week or 10 days. Once we gathered a few more facts, we could decide what to do next. I also gave her the business card of a divorce lawyer. The lawyer and I joined the lead team. Our team included 2 divorce lawyers, a trauma lawyer, a criminal lawyer, me, a real estate manager, a sugar daddy representative, and 2 marriage counselors. Hey, work smarter, not harder. 2 weeks later, Just Mary came by for my first report. Just Mary, your nasty husband is a tough nut to crack. I can tell you that we haven't found anything yet. Sometimes, when it comes to scandals, people like that calm down for a while. We have two options for how to proceed. First, we go into observation mode. We'll keep an eye on the situation, but we won't get too involved. For example, we'll review the camera footage weekly. The second option is to go on the offensive. I paused and called Cindy. She opened the door and entered the room wearing a red dress with a plunging neckline that accentuated her breasts, hugged her hips, and slid up to her thighs. She was so sexy that she could have made even a fundamentalist Mormon monogamous. "Well?" I asked Mary. "We decided to set up surveillance." She handed me an envelope with another $2,400, which would be enough for 4 months of surveillance. It was Easter Sunday, and everyone in our cul-de-sac was busy hunting for Easter eggs. The night before Easter, all the men got together and hid eggs throughout the cul-de-sac. The only rule was that the eggs couldn't be hidden in the houses. Although we didn't have small children, I liked the friendly atmosphere and the twisted sense of humor of all the fathers. They came up with some pretty nasty places for their kids to find the eggs. I was proud of myself. I didn't even drink beer. Things were still tense between Mary and me. I couldn't blame her. I just didn't know how to answer her questions. Hell, I was confused and pretty shaken up by the aftermath. Mary was chatting with Sally. I was in Frank's garage, where he was lecturing me about not drinking. "Poor Bob. Can't hold his liquor, wah, wah, wah," Frank said. "Go to hell, Frank," I replied. "Bob, look at this great martini, perfectly chilled. I just scared him by showing him the vermouth label. See how the chilled glass leaves a perfect circle on the table? See how perfect the olives are?" "Go to hell, Frank," I said with a smile, even though the martini did look damn good. Drool dripped from the left corner of my crooked smile. Sandy went out to the garage and gave me a non-alcoholic beer. I grimaced when I took the first sip. About 30 minutes later, I was apparently trying to hide Easter eggs. I don't remember anything. The next thing I remember is 10 p.m. Mary throwing things at me lying on the couch. Yes, you guessed it. Without pants, with a red circle on my body. Max popcorn. It was just after 11 p.m. when Mary called me on my cell phone. She's very twisted. Her bastard husband got drunk again and cheated on her again. Then she went into chatter mode. You know, when a woman just has to share. I noted the time and started calculating the therapist's fee. I've learned that when wives like this start acting up, it's best to just shut up and let them talk. I put her on speakerphone. I grunted occasionally to keep her going while I put on my pants. I went down to my home office. I let her talk. She said she was going to do a lot of things. Most of them involved colorful ways of inflicting severe pain. Most of the time when women like this behave like this, it's just talk. But sometimes, I made a note to pass just Mary Vito's name on to our criminal defense attorney. Finally, I turned on the cameras in just Mary's house. Nothing, nothing, nothing. None of our cameras caught anything. Just Mary was very upset. I told her that now we knew the case wasn't closed. I also recommended installing more cameras, such as in the living room, hallway, kitchen, pantry, attic, guest bedroom, backyard, front and side yards, the flower bed by the front door, and inside the closet in the hallway. But I need to look around the house to see what I missed. Just Mary agreed to come over in the morning to get started. Bob. Mary finally finished talking to someone named Max. I felt terrible. She walked into the living room looking a little down. "Mary, honey, I feel awful." "You have a hangover, you idiot." "No, Mary, no." I felt nauseous. My stomach was in knots. "I didn't drink, unless beer with beer counts as alcohol." "Ugh," I groaned, clenching my intestines. "God, that hurts." I hunched over. "Mary, I know how you feel when you have a hangover, and this isn't it. Please call an ambulance to take me to the hospital." Sweat poured down my face, and I vomited again. Max popcorn. It was exactly 8 a.m. when Cindy brought Mary home. "Max, what did I pay you good money for?" Listen, a cheating man usually follows a certain pattern. For example, if he's sleeping with a girl in his house, he'll use the master bedroom, not the guest room. If he's talking to her on the phone, 74% of the time he'll be in the garage or the bathroom. These are convenient places for cheating husbands to talk on the phone without disturbing anyone. But the kitchen? The living room? Number. That's where we find cheating wives who are cheating or talking on the phone at least 60% of the time. In addition, cheating wives almost exclusively use the master bedroom, so why waste resources installing unnecessary cameras? So what do we do, Max? Mary asked. Well, Mary returned to my office at 10:30. She handed me an envelope containing $3,500. We went back to work. I called Louis. You take care of this. We want to catch this bastard, Louis. I want everything under control. It was around 11:30 when Mary showed up at the hospital. She was angry and worried at the same time. Although I wasn't feeling very well, I was much better than I had been the night before. The doctor appeared right behind Mary. Hello, I'm Doctor Rusty Blades. Bob, whatever caused your reaction seems to have left your system. Mary, we took a blood sample, and there's no alcohol in his system. It appears to have been an allergic reaction, but as I said, we couldn't determine what it was, so we can't say for sure. Based on your description, it could have been anything. Maybe GHP, but who knows? In any case, Bob, take 3 Advil every 3 hours for the pain if you need it. We'll get your discharge papers ready, and when you're dressed, you can go home. Bob and Mary were overcome with a sense of quiet despair. Despite the evidence of lipstick marks, Bob continued to maintain his innocence. To be honest, he wasn't just worried about what Mary would do, he was seriously worried about himself. The thought that someone had drugged him and taken advantage of him in his own home was driving him crazy. The tension began to take its toll on Bob. He really wanted a drink. Memorial Day at a standstill was marked by hot dogs, bratwurst, and, of course, bratwurst. Frank had set up a full bar in his garage. Moms and dads took turns trying one drink after another. Frank's special was consumed in huge quantities. We're talking gallons, folks. Bob stayed away from Frank's garage. He helped his brothers with the hot dogs. He smoked weed and sipped flavored soda from a freshly opened can. Since he quit drinking, he felt much better. He lost almost 30 pounds, and instead of sitting in a bar for hours, he took up weightlifting. Overall, Bob seemed pretty happy. Mary had finally calmed down enough that Bob could hug her without her pushing his hands away like a crazy child, tearing the wings off a fly. Of course, all the wives in the cul-de-sac were watching Bob 2.0. Mary watched Bob and the wives like a hawk. Max was down the street around the corner about 5 blocks from the house. He was piloting his drone. It hovered about 200 feet up, flying lazy figure eights over the cul-de-sac. He was having fun zooming in on the action below in the cul-de-sac. Cindy sat next to him. Louis was working on the live broadcast, and Melvin was busy hacking into the neighbors' phones, home security systems, email, bank statements. Well, you get the picture. The sky was blue. The clouds were fluffy. They floated smoothly across the sky. The green lawns of the cul-de-sac were strewn with flowers. It was such a perfect late spring day. It was such a pleasant day. Now it was night. After the kids had gone to bed, Tan, the sexy Asian girl from across the street, had just finished teasing Sam when she saw Bob, version 2. She liked what she saw. Of course, her vision and vertical stability were somewhat impaired after visiting Frank's garage. Bob didn't notice Tan approaching, but Mary did. Mary headed toward Tan, but alas, she too had looked into Frank's garage too many times that day. Mary made it to her yard before falling face first into the mud. She looked up in horror as a thin, long-legged, black-haired woman with a firm butt approached her husband. Tan crept up behind Bob and wrapped her arms around him like a boa constrictor preparing to squeeze. She lost her balance, fell off Bob, landed with a thud on the asphalt, and burst into drunken giggles. Tan looked at Bob. He was tense. Her gaze lingered on him. She moistened her lips, straightened up, and lay down. "Bob, love me forever," she burst out laughing again. Bob, sober, looked at Tan. Yes, she was sexy, but she was also a drunken wreck. "Come on, Tan, let's go home." Bob bent down, picked Tan up, and slung her over his shoulder. He carried her down the dead-end street to her house. Max Popcorn saw Bob and Tan, turned to Cindy and said, "DEFCON 5, go ahead, shoot." Cindy slipped out of the car and headed toward them. By the time Cindy reached the dead-end street, Bob had already carried Tan to her house. Bob opened the front door. Tan's husband, Jose, was home. "Hey, Bob. Damn, she's drunk again. Thanks for bringing her home." Tan tried to touch Bob. Now, Tan, behave yourself," Bob said, pushing her hand away. "Jose, I'm sorry, man. She seems like she wants to play. Where should I put her?" After Bob threw Tan onto the huge bed in the master bedroom, he spent a few minutes with Jose. "I've had enough of Tan. I'm sorry for everything," Jose said. "Why do you put up with her behavior, Jose? It happens every time." "Yeah, it drives me crazy. But tomorrow she'll be horrified by her drunken behavior and make up for it with endless flattery, so it's all good." "Okay, buddy, see you later," Bob said, returning to the dead end. Cindy lagged behind, then quietly followed Bob into the dead end. "I'm coming," Cindy said into the microphone attached to her wrist like a Secret Service agent. Max replied, "Okay, remember, pictures pay the bills." Bob returned to the center of the cul-de-sac and began looking for Mary. She was in Frank's garage, but Bob couldn't see her. She was drinking a large glass of Frank's special drink and muttering something about her husband and the women from the cul-de-sac. Bob was looking for his wife, and the cloned wives were throwing themselves at him one after another. He dodged kisses and unfortunate outfits in a futile attempt to seduce Bob's clone into innocent fun. Max Popcorn was beside himself. He watched as Bob deftly dodged one wife after another. Each miss increased his frustration. Tonight was supposed to be the night he caught that traitor. He began to worry that the evening would be wasted. It would be damn hard to get money out of just Mary if tonight's operation failed. Cindy had penetrated deep into enemy territory. She quickly and skillfully took one semi-explicit photo after another of sexual scenes in the alley, but alas, none of them captured Bob in a compromising situation. So far, she had photographed 3 couples having sex. It was a truly wild night in the cul-de-sac and around it. Bob looked around the neighborhood. Sobriety wasn't helping him today. He watched Sam throw up in the yard and then return to Frank's garage to refill his bottle. Bob was overcome with a feeling of exhaustion and disgust, and he decided to go to bed. He was tired, couldn't find Mary, and was tired of being nice to drunk people. He headed for the guest bedroom. He crawled under the covers and fell asleep, his last thought of Mary. Max knew that keeping Mary as a client was now impossible, watching and listening to Bob begin to snore. He thought about sending Cindy after her, but almost immediately dismissed the idea. Mary had forbidden Operation Honeypot. There must be a way to save this night, he thought, staring at the screen where Bob was sleeping. Then his gaze was drawn to the camera set up in Bob's side yard. The light was dim, so he switched the camera to low light mode. He could clearly see Frank entertaining Sally, her eyes rolling back in her head and her moaning with pleasure. Everything was recorded and enlarged on the computer for clarity. Max had an idea. "Listen up, team. We're in the middle of a diamond mine. It's time to collect diamonds. Switch to find new clients operation. Cindy, I need photos. Guys, film everything." Thus began the meticulous documentation of the events of that night in the cul-de-sac. Max smiled as he saw dollar signs in his future. His eyes sparkled as he piloted the drone lower and lower, scanning the surroundings. He took some excellent sex videos when the drone hovered directly over Harry and Susie's house, then flew unnoticed past all the windows in every house, systematically searching the neighborhood for interesting moments. Max sent a message to the members of his potential client club. At the very least, divorce lawyers and marriage counselors should get a few new clients after tonight. The next morning, the cul-de-sac was strangely quiet. Bob got up and went to take a shower. One of the best things about sobriety is the morning. When Bob was drinking, mornings seemed non-existent, like a fairy tale parents tell their children. Bob whistled as he descended the stairs. Before stepping into the shower, he checked himself. No lipstick on his lips. He was relieved, to say the least. He headed to the kitchen to make coffee. While the coffee maker bubbled and steamed, Bob walked to the front door, opened it, and leaned out to get the morning paper. When he looked up, he saw the aftermath. Frank's garage was wide open. There was not an adult in sight on the street. He noticed a pair of feet in shoes with 6-inch heels sticking out from under the hedge separating the property from Raoul's house. A pair of lace panties fluttered in the wind, rolling down the dead-end street. Bob was sitting at the kitchen table when he heard a moan from the living room. He went over and looked at the sofa. Mary was lying there, still clutching an empty glass in her hand. Bob recoiled. Mary was lying on the couch, clearly unconscious, her skirt pulled up to her waist and bright red lipstick smeared across her lips. It was as if a hot knife had been plunged into his heart. He couldn't breathe. Bob exploded. Max woke up in his car with a sore neck. Cindy was snoring in the back seat. Max was somewhat excited by his evening catch. His good mood was clouded by the loss of his drone. It crashed in the backyard around 3 a.m. Max looked at the monitors and saw Bob beating Mary. Max turned up the volume. "Damn it, Mary, how could you?" Mary stood up, stunned, looked down past her crumpled skirt, along her long, slender legs at her feet, where she saw her thong hanging from her ankle. Mary screamed.